ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੀ ਸਾਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੇ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਅੱਜ ਮੌਜੂਦ ਨੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਰਿਫਿਊਜੀ ਤੇ ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਜੌਨ ਮਕੈਲਮ। ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ, ਫਸਟ ਆਫ ਆਲ ਵੈਲਕਮ।
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much for taking some time. So you are in Brampton today with a very important announcement. What's that?
Well, to put it most simply, we are reducing the amount of time for families to reunite from 2 years to 1 year.
Okay.
In January of this year, it took on average 26 months if you were applying from inside Canada, 18 months from outside Canada, so average 24, 2 years. And as of today, the time will be 1 year. So that is a substantial reduction, and this was a major commitment we made during the election. And so I think 1 year is a whole lot better than 2 years, and I'm hoping that in some months from now we'll be able to make it even lower.
How you are going to achieve that goal?
Okay, I'll tell you one thing we're not doing. We're keeping all of our screening for security, criminality, and health, and we're keeping on guard against fraudulent marriages. So those things won't change. What we have done is 3 things. We've spent an additional $25 million into our department to hire more people to process the cases. Second, we've increased the levels of spouses allowed to come into the country each year, which will reduce the inventory and help to reduce the processing time. And second, we've engaged the department, the civil servants in the department, to make the whole system simpler and more efficient and easier, especially for people whose first language is not English. So we have a whole new application system, and there will be a new kit that people will use that will be online as of December 15th.
Very good. So have you done something to reduce processing time for in-Canada applications?
Yes, everybody.
Okay.
This is a one-tier system.
Because
everybody.
higher always.
I know. It was 26 months in January of this year, and it's going to be 12 months as of today. And so it'll be 12 months for people inside Canada, 12 months for people outside Canada, and 12 months for those already in the system and for the new applicants. So that is the new policy. For those who have been waiting some time already, it'll probably be less than 12 months because it's still first in, first out. But the commitment is, instead of 2 years, it's 1 year.
And then you're also going to remove 2 years condition on spousal permanent residency. What was the need of that?
The need of that, because it led to domestic abuse. If you're a Canadian man and you have a foreign woman coming in as your spouse and she has no status for 2 years, and you abuse her, I'm not saying you would or I would, but if it happens, and then she can often not leave the marriage because she has no status, she'd be afraid to be deported back to wherever. And so we heard this representation from many organizations before we became the government, so we made it a commitment, and we are doing it. So everybody who comes in as a spouse will be immediately a permanent resident with all the rights of a permanent resident, rather than in limbo on a conditional basis for 2 years.
That condition was brought because Canadian spouses were always complaining a lot of fraud.
Yeah. Well, there's no evidence. My officials in my department tell me there's no evidence that system did anything effective to reduce the fraud. We will still be on guard for the fraud, as we always have been.
All right. So what are you doing to increase the age of dependent children?
Okay, we're putting it back to where it was.
Yeah, we talked in March about that.
Yes, and I've signed everything that needs to be signed.
You told in March that you have signed.
Yeah, and look, these regulatory processes take too long, but it's the system. So I don't know exactly when, but in maybe a couple of months soon, it will be the law of the land. So I agreed to it a long time ago. It was part of our platform, but it has to go through a regulatory process, so it is not yet the law of the land.
Okay, and do you have a time frame or date or some kind of assurance for our audience from what date or month you are going to implement that?
I don't know. I don't have a precise date, but it'll be a number of months, but I hope not too many.
Okay, within next year?
Certainly. All right. Certainly less than a year.
How far is Bill C6?
Okay, Bill C-6 is very important to us. It's the principle that a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, no two tiers. But it's passed through the House of Commons in June, like almost 6 months ago. It's now in the Senate. We do not control the Senate. The Senate drives its own bus. But I have been speaking to many senators, hoping that it will get through there as quickly as possible. I do not think it will get through finally before Christmas, but I'm hoping it will be before their committee before Christmas, and I'm hoping it will become the law of the land early in 2017. But as I say, the Liberal government does not control the Senate. The Senate is an independent body, and I'm doing everything I can to persuade enough senators to support it. And I'm sure it will happen, but it's not happening as quickly as I would like.
What are the major changes in C6 you are bringing?
Well, the major one is this business about a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, that if someone commits a terrorist crime, you put the person in jail. And that applies to dual citizens and all citizens. But we're also making it a little quicker to become a citizen. It can be done in 3 years rather than 4 years. And we're easing the language tests on those aged 55 to 65. Those are the main changes.
All right. So what about the stripping of citizenship? Your government is continuously stripping citizenship under the present Citizenship Act. So nothing changed in that.
Well, that's right.
All right.
What we have said is we won't have...
Or rather increased. More citizenships are being stripped.
More at least are being investigated. We have always had the possibility of stripping citizenship for people who make false representations to become a citizen. And that has not changed. That has always been the case. Now, what happened was, under the previous government, the RCMP found a ring of fraudulent criminal people fraudulently becoming Canadian citizens. And we believe our citizenship is valuable, and if people fraudulently acquire it, it should be removed. So we are processing those cases. But at the same time, we believe that there should be a strong right to appeal, because no court is perfect. No government is perfect. So if someone has their citizenship removed, they should have a stronger appeal mechanism. Right now there is an appeal mechanism, but we think it could be strengthened, and we're working potentially to include that in the bill that is now before the Senate.
Very good. And can you tell our audience a little bit about citizenship fee, $630? Is that reasonable?
Well, that's how it's been, and I don't think we have made no commitment to change that.
So we have a little bit, a lot of Canadians and permanent residents who are waiting too long for their parents and grandparents to join them in Canada. So you accept only 10,000 applications in 1 year, each year. So which that 10 years applications are first week of January, and all applications are full, and people are not getting enough opportunity to rejoin with their parents in Canada.
Well, we don't have space for everyone to bring their parents. So we can accept a certain number, and we're very happy to do so. But we also have 10-year super visas and other mechanisms which people can use if it suits them while they wait to become a permanent resident, or other people's situation is such that they don't really want to become permanent residents, they can use the super visa. So there are a number of different avenues, and we did double the number from 5,000 to 10,000 who could apply every year.
In the election, super visa was criticized. Now you are going to keep super visa and have no intention to increase the applications?
No, we never criticized super visa. Some people thought,
candidates did.
Well, maybe a few candidates, but I never did, the party never did. I think super visas are good. What we want is a combination of options. For some people, the super visa is a good vehicle. For other people, permanent residence is a better vehicle. So we've always said that it's good to have these options. And so we're not getting rid of super visa. We never were.
Another issue is PR card renewal processing time is almost 6 to 8 months. Are you doing something to
We
reduce it?
radically reduced that.
How much is that now?
31 days for renewals, 41 days for brand new. So that's a big reduction from what it was before.
You have championed always that the international students are the best immigrants for Canada. So you have announced new policy. You are making easier them to become permanent residents of Canada. What have you done?
This is something we've done, not we're about to do. We've done it.
Yeah,
like the announcement today is done. And what we are saying is, as you just quoted me, I have often said that the best future Canadians are international students because they're educated, they speak English or French, they know the country, they're young. We want them.
Okay.
So how do we get more? Well, we have to persuade them to come to the cold Canadian winters and not the warm Australian beaches. So one way we do that is we give more points to them under express entry to make it easier for them to become permanent residents, which we have just done. So that means that no less than 40% of all of our economic immigrants are likely to be international students. Okay. So we think they are the wave of the future. We're in competition with other countries, and we've made it easier for them to become permanent residents.
Are you making some adjustments to the immigration policy according to the job market of Canada?
We have that capacity. We've just introduced a global talent strategy. There are high-tech companies desperate who want to expand in Canada, but they need a certain number of people from overseas. And so we have reduced the processing time for that to 15 days. There are many cases where immigrants lead to the creation of Canadian jobs. Thomson Reuters is a company that recently we induced to set up their head office in Canada, and in return for facilitating the entry of maybe a dozen foreigners, including their CEO, they agreed to make investments in Canada to create at least 400 jobs, maybe over 1,000 jobs going forward.
At the end, do you want to say something before you go?
Pleasure to talk to you again, and a pleasure to talk to your audience, and I'm very delighted that we today have announced we're cutting the waiting time for immediate families in half, from 2 years to 1 year. So that's a good step.
Right. Thank you very much, Minister. So ਲੋ ਜੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਰਿਫਿਊਜੀ ਤੇ ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਜੌਨ ਮਕੈਲਮ ਹੋਣਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.